Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Amanda Gelb. I'm so excited to be with you all this evening. Thank you, Jen, and the whole team for having me. And yeah, I currently work at Lyft. I've been working at Lyft for 3.5 years, the rideshare company. Right now, I'm working on mapping. So I'm across all things mapping. We're building our own maps, which is a really fun systems-wide challenge. Before that, I've worked in virtual reality. I've worked agency side, in-house, range of experience I'm happy to chat about later. But tonight I'm going to be talking you through a program that I kicked off at Lyft when I first joined and was the only researcher in the New York office. Okay, so this is to talk about sharing the power, and the idea here, and we can talk about it in the Q&A, I'm excited to get into it, is all about decentralizing research, sharing some of our knowledge with our cross-function. As researchers, we do a lot. Our roles are complex, and if you're in this meetup right now, I'm willing to bet that your role contains multitudes. Here are just some of the roles that I've taken on as a researcher across my career. Now, the beauty of what we do is that it spans disciplines and approaches. So some days I'm an anthropologist like Jane Goodall, observing people in their natural environments. And other days I'm inhabiting the persona of Sherlock Holmes, looking beyond what the pieces say to what's at the heart of the data. So I got this new job a few years back at Lyft, and I'm going to be their first researcher in the New York office, focusing on this complex space that involves both the passengers and the drivers, the pickup stage of rideshare. Cool. I'm nervous, excited. And when I first joined Lyft New York, the office was small enough to hear every desk conversation. All of us were crammed into one narrow floor. And I've been around the research world long enough to wonder where on the continuum my teammates are. So I found prior to research on the scene, most teams, or companies for that matter, fall into one of two camps. The cricket side of the scale, just absolute and total silence, eyes blinking. You're a researcher? Blink. What's that? Blink, blink. I've never worked with research before. Or the total other extreme. You as the researcher and your research are just an absolute celebrity. Insatiable demand. People are elbowing each other to get some of your time and attention. When I arrived at Lyft, it was definitely more of the crickets scenario. And it's lonely out there as a sole researcher. So here's where I went to work drumming up interest like it was my job. I got out the metaphorical megaphone and started running lunch and learns where I shared what research does. I had one-on-one coffee chats and meetings with about 60 of the 80 people in the office. I spoke at all hands and went to engineering huddles to learn what teams were building. I reminded managers to bring up the opportunity to test ideas at their respective meetings. And then I also did a small research project on a mutually interesting space for most of the teams. So I built out a rider journey across the rideshare experience and included things like our riders' emotions, workarounds, things they do in their lifts. And the requests began to trickle in. So a designer had just launched this new feature, pickup notes, which was a way for riders to communicate to drivers some of the details of their pickup spot, descriptions of themselves or place, like that they were standing outside a McDonald's or wearing a purple sweatshirt, that they had luggage or groceries, that kind of thing. Data scientists were noticing some interesting behavioral data that took place during the ride itself, but didn't know why. And they wanted researchers' help determining what happens in the car, something our app doesn't tell us, and only research could help unpack with riders and drivers themselves. A product manager was operating in the dark about the biggest pickup pain points around airports and wanted to help uncover those to inform an upcoming roadmap of what his team would be building. My personal favorite, a group of very creative engineers who had heard the drumbeats of research across the office, wondered if I could help them test their hackathon project and pressure test some features before they launched. All really interesting projects, no? All worthy of a researcher's efforts, right? Except that they all seem time sensitive. And it was just me, one researcher, with all of these requests. I wanted to do a good job, and I had created all of this demand. It was overwhelming and stressful. From this place, Rapid Research was born. Rapid Research is a self-serve program with training at key moments, a representative panel of customers, and synthesis support. So we'll start with the self-serve. As researchers, we know a lot, and this is where we share that knowledge and bolster our cross-functional partners. We become coaches, counselors, paving the path to research for our teams. Training at key moments. So we have a lot to share. And as we're doing that, it's important that we pave this path to enable our partners to step into research roles, that we're equipping them with the tools they need to be successful. So I have found trainings at key moments of rapid research do just that. Representative panel. So we bring in real customers for this research. I found 6 to be the magic number, and I'll often recruit 1 or 2 as floaters to fill in case we get a no-show. Synthesis support. So lastly, after running this program a few times, I got the feedback that the synthesis part, that looking at the data collected, determining what's a pattern, what's an insight, was hard to do for my partners, and my support was particularly needed there. So I started offering office hours where rapid research teams could book a session with me to review their notes and research sessions together, and we collaborate on the findings. So how does it all work? Here's how I run it at Lyft, and you can take what's helpful for you or your own teams going forward. Ding! This became the sound of rapid research. Imagine I just rang a gong. It really got people's attention, and I would bring this gong along with me and kick off my pitches by sounding it in the office itself. Then I would meet with all interested parties. And this meeting was a huge unlock in the early days. So I got to meet a bunch of interested folks I wouldn't have come into contact with otherwise, and hear what they wanted to learn, hypotheses they had. However, as the program evolved, it became too time-consuming for me to meet with all interested parties, and we moved to an asynchronous intake form. And the form was the perfect forcing function for teammates to think through what they wanted to learn and elaborate on their goals on their own. In the early days of rapid research, if you asked to be in the program, you were in, no questions asked. And while that was effective in bringing people into the process, some projects simply weren't suited for this type of research, either because they required a trained researcher like myself to examine the issue and be attuned to the nuances of the question or the research method, or again, the method itself. So for example, a survey, a multi-phased approach, in-context interviews, those all don't work well here. So what makes for a rapid research project? You can see here on the take it area, I landed on some criteria for project selection. So urgency, how soon does the team need to make a product decision? Impact, how will the insights be used? What will your potential impact be? And then research fit, are 20-minute interviews the right way to answer these research questions? When it comes to research fit in particular, it's okay to own what this approach is good for and what it isn't. So rapid research works best for approaches like design comparison, usability testing, concept testing. These are straightforward approaches that can answer a specific question in a short amount of time. All right, so now that I've gotten a lot of attention and people excited, I've got these projects submitted and people are really excited to work on them, and we've selected the right projects. Now it's about grabbing the team, bringing them together, and aligning on roles. So each project would kick off with a high energy team working session. I made it mandatory for everyone to have at least one other teammate participate. So the load was shared and someone was available for backups, dry runs, prototype feedback, that kind of thing. And this is the exact slide that I would share with those teams to delineate which items fell to them, which fell to myself, and which we shared together. And you can see there's a lot of pink there. That's what I'm asking the team to do themselves. If you look closely, you'll see that I'm asking teams to write their own discussion guides. So how are engineers or product managers supposed to write a discussion guide? They're pretty hard to write. Everything that can be a template should be a template here. So again, you're the expert. This program lets you share that expertise, and it's on you to set everyone else up for success. So you can see how I did that with templates here. At the very end on the left, you can see that's my intake form. So that asks questions like, what decisions are you trying to make? What's your hypothesis? How certain are you that it's true? In the middle is the main rapid research template, and that links out to mock research plans, discussion guides, note-taking templates. And then at the very end here in pink, you can see an insights one-pager. And that asks teams to reflect on the top 3 things they learned and pull in some supporting customer quotes. Remember, it's the non-researchers that are going to be doing the research. It's also those teams that are going to be making the discussion guide. And also moderating the interviews. So how do teams learn to moderate? I created a course on the greatest hits of moderation 101, and I call it Moderate Like a Boss. So this is an internal training I give to all new facilitators, and it gives them some useful tips on interviewing users. It also has them practice out loud for the last 20 minutes of the session. And what you're looking at right now is an internal badge. So we have this badging system, and I created this badge to create the hype for the training and to give people a little bit of cred, you know? So over 70 people so far have been awarded this badge, from UX writers to technical program managers to directors of engineering. Like, my goal is to get anyone that you may or may not think would be involved in research actually moderating sessions themselves. So here's a sneak peek of what I offer in this Moderate Like a Boss workshop. The first thing are cues for teams to remind them that it's not the participant, it's not who you're interviewing that's in control of the session. You are the one that's come up with the questions. You get to control where the discussion goes. I also ask everyone to invite at least one other coworker or co-pilot to participate with them. And this is where I remind them to set really clear expectations. So if this person is taking notes for you, be really clear on what type of notes you want them to take. If you're alternating, you know, you're each moderating, make sure you know which session you're, you know, switching off with, that kind of thing. Be interested all the time, right? This is like the unconditional respect of whoever you're chatting to. Even if you're super duper bored, you really want to make whoever you're interviewing and talking with this research feel like they're the most important thing and they have your full attention. But at the same time, you want to keep a poker face, particularly with usability testing, right? So if you're having someone try complete a task or get to a particular button and they're not sure what it is, you don't want to give anything away as to whether or not they're doing it correctly or not. Of course, the researcher trail off. So you would add a pickup note because you couldn't find your driver. You mentioned you called them. That was, oh, so you're saying it's moderator gold right there. Another important thing, I work for a tech company, perhaps many of you do. Even if you don't, whatever product you're working on, whoever you're interviewing likely doesn't know the internal jargon, the lexicon that we use. And that kind of thing sticks into us really easily. We talk about a flow or a wireframe or a mock or a pill for a button, or any of the like designy or researchy terms or internal jargon that we're using. Make sure that you're using, you know, your participants' own words, and that you're really, yeah, just not using any of that jargon that we have. And then lastly, mindset. So we come into research with a ton of bias, obviously. Maybe you're nervous, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're not sure how you're going to perform as a moderator. This is where you have that frozen moment and you just let it all go. You try being in the moment, you leave your nerves behind, just be present. All right. So that is the training that folks go through to be able to moderate these sessions. Now we've come to what I call game day, which is the actual rapid research day. This is when the sessions take place. So everyone's in the room. Here's what a research session looks like. We've got 6 general population customers. So those are the orange Cs, and they rotate through 6 research team projects. So those will be those green Ts. And the idea here is that this all happens live. However, obviously for pandemic reasons and the past few years, we've been doing it on breakout session in Zoom, and it works really well. So each team has 20 minutes with each participant with a 5-minute break in between. And the entire rapid research session lasts roughly 3 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah, Aaron put in the chat, speed dating. This is totally speed dating. Everyone's rotating around to a different team. Yes. That pickup notes team, they're sitting in one location while 6 different riders are passing through to weigh in on that feature. And there is so much energy and excitement in the room. For many partners, this is the first time that they are speaking face-to-face with our customers. So you've got 6 whole projects getting some research at the same time. And the second part to seeing everyone in action, engaging face-to-face with those customers, is seeing those learnings forming, those research wheels turning. So for example, an engineer who didn't know what research was 3 weeks ago is now sharing an insight about the number of usability bugs in a build that they're going to launch the next day. Sharing the learnings puts my teammates in the research hot seat in the best possible way because they own their insights, not me. So they're going forward and chatting with their respective teams about them and spreading all that research gospel and everything that we learned. That product manager, for example, they are learning that luggage makes a really big difference for pickups. And so For example, that pickup notes team that we were talking about earlier with that designer, the designer is now thinking about how pickup notes can be used for airports, and the product manager is thinking about the airport's use case with pickup notes. And again, this is a real example of two teams that did rapid research at Lyft. These teams worked entirely different organizations, so they wouldn't have necessarily even come into contact if not for this rapid research session together. So that cross-pollination is also just really a magical, beautiful thing that happens. My favorite moments are overhearing an engineer turn to another engineer and say, no, don't build it that way. Those 3 buttons are too close together for our riders. Or a product manager sharing with a teammate in the lunch line that he observed drivers need more assistance finding pickup spots, and we should think about how to help them with a brainstorm. So these insights, these findings also go beyond the rapid research program into various casual discussions, into different team sessions, and lead to a lot of further conversation and also product action. After running this program, I definitely became a research celebrity in Lyft's New York office. But more than that, it became a virtuous cycle for me. So the people that I invested in with training and synthesis support got better and better at collecting light feedback the more they participated in the rapid research programs. It fostered a learning culture at Lyft and in our office. It gave my teams ownership over the research insights and trust in the process. And this has been so successful for us as a company that we've actually created and are hiring for 3 permanent research teammates whose sole job it will be to run rapid research for different organizations. Thank you.
Excellent. Amanda, thank you so much. I love that. I see some questions. Excellent show. So, Amanda, this seems very similar to democratization of research. And that's a very controversial topic.
Oh, yes.
Some people love it, some people hate it. And, how do you get comfortable or get other people's comfortable from a researcher perspective in doing that, getting the team to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is controversial. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I kind of love that about this program because I'm really clear, as you heard in my talk, on what it's good for and what it's not. And I find that when people are like anti-research democratization, they see research as just like the big bucket of everything that we possibly do. Whereas in this case, it's for a very particular set of circumstances. There needs to be a specific question. It needs to be able to be answered within 20-minute, interviews. A lot of teams will apply and come to me with something and I'll say like, no, that's foundational research. I need to be doing that, or no, whatever it is. And so it opens up a really great dialogue and helps educate my teams just going through this process of applying. And I, as a researcher, feel fully empowered to tell people, no, this is not a great use of this particular program. So yeah, we all, I think, also rightly so, are rather protective of our titles and our roles because we've worked really hard for them. Some people have gone to graduate school or beyond. Other people have, worked in the field for a number of years. Like, we've all earned our role as researchers, and we should be able to hold on to that. So I completely respect that. And that's why you saw all of the trainings that I created. Like I control this entire process end to end. There isn't a project that sneaks in here. There isn't someone who just steps in front of our customers without being trained by me, and like the basics of moderation. And one more thing I'll share also, actually, I didn't share this slide, but in my moderator training, I have a slide that says like, you are not a researcher. Like, I make it very clear that you're going through this process, but that doesn't make you the researcher. Like the badge is moderate like a boss, not, research like a boss or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm pretty confident, at least in this particular program, being really successful. And again, I created it when I was the only researcher in the office. There weren't 80 people asking for my time and attention, but there were way more projects than I could possibly handle. I find that's still the case, honestly, as a researcher. Like, there's often more demand than I can keep up with. So this program and being able to democratize it, again, with like really trusted coworkers, enabled me to get 6 teams some directional feedback on whatever they wanted to learn in that, the amount of time it took me to run that program, instead of just me doing one project in that same amount of time.
Sure. So, Amanda, how do you determine what you permit them to do the research on versus what you need to take on because of your expertise?
Yeah. So definitely the like more strategic foundational types of questions I'll take on. I'd say like anything that needs design direction that doesn't necessarily fit into the roadmap. Oh, one thing that we've started doing, because we've run this program now for a number of years, is knowing that we have this program, planning it into our roadmap a little bit when we can. So at Lyft, we plan on the half. So we plan in 6-month increments essentially. And I run a process, and many other research teammates do as well, where we're getting requests for research ahead of that 6-month period, because our product managers have a sense of what features they want to be, designing and building and launching. Designers know what, concepts or things that they're working on. So I try to get ahead of my workload by getting as many requests as possible in advance. And then when reviewing those, I determine what, I work on. And I also start to flag some potential rapid research projects for the team. So there could be a time where product manager, wants me to validate some, small featurette that we've built, but the product has launched, and therefore there are features that we're building that requires research attention. So I may say like, hey, this is a really valid use of rapid research. Can you hold on this research request for 2 months until we run this program again? And I promise that I can get you in front of customers and train you in how to do that. And often just having that program kind of in my back pocket in the planning process enables me to kind of cherry pick what I'm working on, but also prime teams to be doing their own research that way.
Sure. Okay, great. So, Amanda, you talked about an intake form. What kind of things do you ask on that intake form?
Yeah, we ask what stage the thinking is in. So sometimes like engineers will just pop by my desk. Again, I love these conversations. And they're like, hey, you have a researcher. You're a researcher. I have an idea. And, I did it in this hackathon, or, I'm thinking about something and noticing some sort of pattern. Yeah. Other times like designers have a whole, robust suite of designs that they want to test. So my first question is just like, where are you in your thinking? Is it like a rough idea? Is it a concept that you want to test? Is it a wireframe? Is it something that's been launched but didn't get research? Like it's out in the world and it's performing a particular way, and now we want to understand why. Like kind of any stage from like truly in someone's brain to has been used by millions of people. That's the first question. And then I get some more details around people's hypothesis, some of the specifics around what they want to learn, how confident they think their hypotheses are true. That gives me really good fodder also when I'm determining what projects are good candidates for research. And to be honest, it's a really good forcing function for my cross-functional partners to think about their research requests. Like it's very easy to request research. It's a little harder. It's like kind of a purposeful like little gate. It's like if you really want research, you're going to fill out this pretty short form, but it's going to force you to think about what you actually want to learn. So I found that to be really helpful across the board.
Okay. So, how do you ensure consistency, like quality of questions and the analysis, across different teams? I mean, how do you make sure it's good?
Yeah, that's a great and tough question. The truth is I used to be much more hands-on, and it like truly took over all of my nights and weekends, and I've like learned to let it go a little bit and not have it be perfect. But there was this nice curve that happened because I've had the same set of partners for a few rounds of rapid research. I find when you go through the program 2 to 3 times, like my partners start to get much better, like markedly improved in moderation, in synthesis, in the types of questions that they come up with. And that creates a lot less work for me as I'm reviewing their discussion guides, as I'm, helping them do the synthesis. So in the beginning, I would say I wasn't great at that. And I kind of just like over controlled for quality and went in and manually changed everyone's questions and changed some of the wording and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm a lot more hands off these days and kind of trust the trainings and the process. And then also like I don't position this as like the end all be all. Like oftentimes a team will do rapid research and then learn that they actually need more research, and so they'll either I'll take on that project at that stage because we got some directional feedback, and then I can control for things, or they'll do another round of rapid research. They'll go back and change the designs, or they'll change the prototype. So it's also not a one and done. And that takes off some of the pressure from the teams and for me. No one's coming to rapid research with like the full blown thing that they're about to launch with a ton of, C-level eyes on it, not knowing how it's going to work. And I'm like, okay, you go off and figure it out, report
Yeah,
back.
got it. Perfect. So Amanda, can you talk a little bit more about which research methods are good candidates for rapid research, and maybe which ones are not so great?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say concept testing, any kind of usability or task completion, anything in that space. And again, within those two, it's really making sure that you have like one or two specific questions to ask. So you're looking at like one flow, or you're looking across like particular part of the feature, for example. We've often done some exploratory research, and so when we did them in person, I set up like a faux living room style, you can't do in context interviews, you can't do ethnographies, it's not for diary studies, again, it's not for surveys, it's often not for foundational research, but I did find we could get a fair amount of really helpful, like exploratory, researchy kind of questions answered in just an informal interview, like an in-depth interview method for those 20 minutes, again, with like a very specific targeted set of questions around one area. We've done card sorts in the past with mixed success. Again, we could talk about card sorts if folks want extensively. It can be the type of thing that is like you get very clear direction on, or you don't, depending on how many cards you have and how you set up the test. And so again, that I did with a trusted designer who knew what card sorts were. I don't know that I would advocate for that. Again, going back to the control piece, like I don't know that anyone could just take on a card sort if they had not participated in that before, or you as the researcher were not going to be training them, but we have done that with success. So yeah, I'm kind of open to a range of methods and approaches.
Just curious, was your card sort digital or a physical card sort?
It was physical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you'd say, no, this is maybe too big for rapid research?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you avoid participant fatigue?
Ooh, that's a great question. We used to have one 15-minute break in between. So we would do session, 15 minutes, session. And the participants were like, hey, this is like just too much. Like you need to give us smaller breaks in between. So that's actually direct feedback from, our participants themselves. So now we do a 5-minute break between each session. And I find particularly because we're doing them, remotely these days, we just had a rapid research session this past Friday. And it was like a really nice moment because like we asked the participants, like turn on your camera, look at the screen, make sure sometimes we're having them click into things or download a prototype. It is like cognitively, a lot of context switching and pretty intense. And so, yeah, the 5 minutes just enables them to like look at their phone or get a drink or kind of do some sort of like brain cobwebs sweeping in between each session. And that's how we handle it for now. It is very intense. I do prime everyone, both the teams, right? Because a lot of people are moderating for the first time. It's a lot of sessions to moderate, as well as the participants. Like, hey, this is kind of a funky thing that we do. You're going to see a lot of different ideas. They're not necessarily going to be connected. Just like be in the moment for each 20-minute session. And yeah, so far we've gotten pretty good feedback from the participants, but we do prime them for that.
Okay. How about analysis? How does that go?
Yeah. So that is something that I think I somewhat foolishly thought teammates could just take on themselves. I thought like, okay, they'll be able to find some patterns, pull some quotes. Like again, it was an insights one pager. So I wasn't asking anyone to come up with an extensive deck. I wasn't asking anyone to put together, again, like these teammates are not researchers. And so like, I didn't want to give them the keys to the castle, as it were. I wanted this to be very clearly like a one pager with what they were taking away, which is like, here are our top 3 learnings. Here are 4 quotes, directly that make that point. Here's how our hypothesis was or wasn't proven as true. Here are our next steps as a team. Like that's truly just the one pager I was asking them to fill out initially. And so, yeah,
Is that part of the training then? The analysis?
Yeah.
Like,
so yeah, it started that way. And then teams came to me and they said like, hey, this is actually really hard. Like you've asked us to look through our notes, and we're looking through our notes. Like, what is a pattern? What is an insight? What if 2 people said yes and 1 person said no, and I didn't get a read on this person? Like it does get very ambiguous. And so that's when I created the synthesis training. And that goes through, how to just very basically affinity mapping, the ways in which you can, in an unbiased way, read through your notes, code your data, group things thematically. Yeah, it kind of trains them in those just basics of essentially like rewatching the videos, coding their notes, and then using that and not their initial observations. Slide one of that training is also like, we don't care about your opinion. This is like what you purely like observe, like what happened. More research is thinking through like what happened instead of what they want to jump to. And I'm guilty of this too, right? Like you watch someone really misuse a way that you intended for a particular product to be enough times, you're like, okay, here's the thing that we need to fix. Here's like, we're going to make this change. We're going to tweak that thing. And that is often what, where research ends up. But I really try and anchor my teammates in the synthesis training on like, you just want to capture what you observed. Like, don't jump to what comes next. Make sure that you're writing down what the participants did, because maybe a different team is going to pick this up, right, in like a month, and they are not as interested in your ideas that maybe got built or didn't get built. Like that baseline data is what's most important. So those types of things are in the training.
Yeah, that certainly is a challenge. The designer gets excited and starts to solution based on the research that they have heard. I can definitely see that. So how about somebody going rogue? Somebody like going off the script or injecting bias, they can't help themselves. Tell us about some times you've seen that and what you do to correct that.
Yeah, I definitely have stories, maybe not for the recording, but yeah, I think it's really like, I empathize with my partners because it's hard to be a researcher. It's hard to stay neutral. It's hard to keep that poker face. It's hard to not, ask that leading question or that follow-up, especially people that are not necessarily bad actors, but, have a very particular way that they think the research is going to go before they've done the research. So they're almost doing the research to validate, a decision they've made in their mind. And then they find, ooh, it's not happening that way. I now need to go on a different path. And they kind of try overcorrect or steer participants in a particular way. Those I think have been the most extreme examples, just in like someone stepping in and saying like, oh, but you also like this, right? Or like, oh, but did you mean to say that? Like truly just explicit, looking for affirmation of their ideas when the participant had said something in contrast. So there I do step in. I obviously don't do it in the moment, but I do it shortly after. We use Slack as a messaging tool. So I'll often Slack that person if this happens enough times. So me and a few people from my research team are like circling through. So there's always like in each rapid research session, there's a note taker, there's an observer. We have up to 2 observers per team. Remotely. In person, I think that would be too many, but remotely we'll have a note taker and we'll have up to 2 observers. And so I'll often like ping the observers to see what they're learning, or myself or other researchers are kind of floating through the session. So I listen in to at least one of each of them. And I find these actors are pretty easy to identify. Like if they're doing it once, they're likely doing it many times. And so that's when I'll suggest maybe that someone else on their team, maybe they take a break from moderating for a few sessions and have a note taker who's also trained go through it. Very occasionally, like once I stepped in and said like, hey, I think maybe you're a little too close to this. Let me just take over for these next few sessions and we can talk how to be a little more removed for the next rapid research. So no one's ever gotten banned from rapid research. Like everyone means really well, right? I think it's just, going back to that control question you asked earlier, like I try be hands off and empower people to do their own thing, but there's a degree to which you cannot steer the research. That is, you want to try stepping.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So talk a little bit about how you're recruiting participants. What's that process look like?
Yeah, for sure. We've grown as a team and as a discipline, which is really lovely. So it used to be me. I used some online panels, or I would recruit through our internal recruiting based on particular passenger behavior. So I'd say the biggest mistake I made, and I would urge you if you're doing this program or considering this program, is to just recruit general population customers, whoever those are for you. Because my first few rapid research sessions, I was trying to do a specialized recruit, but across 6 teams. So I'd be like, oh, okay, like, who has like taken an airport ride in the past 30 days, but also like half of those people have called their driver, half of them haven't called their driver, but they've also, are across these different cities or these regions where we're thinking about launching this thing. Like it was just, there were way too many needs for 6 people to match. And so I just to keep it much easier on a recruit, I switched to general population, and everyone was completely understanding of that. Oh, actually, going back to what we were talking about earlier, we were talking more about methodology of what this is and isn't appropriate for, but in a clear use case here of what rapid research may not be good for is if you need a very particular participant pool. So if you're looking to recruit a particular kind of customer that is, not the average customer that's coming through, that may be, a reason to not have a team in rapid research, because that would, skew all of the other teams in terms of talking to that one type of participant. But yeah, I would do that recruit and switch to general population just through various panels and whatnot. And we now have a research ops team member who does those recruits for us. We also, again, as we started to adopt this program across different organizations and lines of business, we built in that recruiting support for the researchers. So that's been really, really helpful. And again, we have a schedule now when we run rapid research. Sometimes we roadmap to it. We do a whole PR blitz before, the month before it happens across different teams. And so we've built in the recruiting as part of that timeline.
Okay, great. So how about the after effect, the afterwards of the research? What kind of repository system do you have, and how do you keep hold of those artifacts?
Yeah, the afterglow. I feel like that's what it's like. You're like in research, you're like maybe exhausted or exhilarated. I don't know. I feel like everyone has a different phase of what they like. There's a moment when like the data starts to come in where I get excited if I'm conducting a survey or, looking for respondents for rapid research. And then when it's all finished and you've got this beautiful artifact from it, that to me is another kind of magical moment. So a few teams have switched from the Insights one pager to a mini deck. And we now do a lunch and learn across all of the rapid research teams. So we have an hour slot, and each team is expected to come, like if you moderated or note took, you're expected to come and present your team's findings to all the other teams, but we open it up to everyone. So, if you're working with an engineering pod and they didn't even know rapid research was happening, they could, 20 engineers from your team could still hop in and learn from your team's findings or everyone else's team's findings. So that's a clear moment where we're sharing all of those learnings much more widely than those that just participated in the program. And then that deck is shared as well. So we have a whole, as I'm sure many of us do, a whole, way that we're categorizing and filing all of our reports and our templates and all of that kind of stuff. So all past either Insights one pagers or rapid research decks from these lunch and learns live in a folder, a Google folder, which is the system we use, and we share that out.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about timelines, Amanda. How long does it take to come up with an initial rapid research to finish? And then how frequently are you doing them? Talk a little bit about time.
Totally. So we do them every 2 months, more or less. And right now, how we're set up organizationally, we've hired 2 out of the 3 rapid research researchers for our team. So we have one on the rider side of the house, we have one on the driver side of the house, and we're going to hire a 3rd for kind of our autonomous and transit bikes and scooters and that part of the company. And so, yeah, I think if you're, we don't need to get too structural or whatnot, but depending on what org or team you're in, like you would ladder up to a particular rapid researcher who is running that program for you. And their cadence, I think, like they alternate. So they're not all happening at the same time. Like rapid research is happening continuously at the company throughout the year. So if any executives or anyone, wants to listen in, likely it's happening on any given month or the month after. So I know that they stagger the schedule there. And then in terms of were you asking how long it took me to set up the program? Was that the first part?
Well, like how much is a research session? Like from planning to execution to wrapping it up? Days, weeks, hours?
Great question.
Approximately.
Yeah, it took me about a month, 50% of my time to set up the program initially. So creating the templates, creating the trainings, I tested it kind of as a prototype. And so in the way that we at least need to attend design crits. So we're constantly critiquing designers' work and engaging in that. I would bring rapid research to be critted by my teammates. So anyone that had gone through the first few programs was like obligated to join me and like working through the kinks of what worked and what didn't work. And from there, that's when we decided, okay, hey, I was meeting with everyone in person. People really wanted an online intake form. That was like easier for them to think through their thoughts in advance. So a lot of these changes kind of happened in that moment, and I needed to create time to be able to change templates or change process. So that's part one, which was a large-ish upfront investment for me. But once all of those things existed and the program existed, I'd say it's 4 weeks end to end for the most part. So sometimes we have teams selected in advance again, because we're, some teams are road mapping, other teams, my team just participated last Friday, and there was one of the teams that was slated to do this research a month ago dropped out, and that rapid researcher came to me and said, hey, like, does the mapping team have anything? And I sent some people her way, and they picked 2 projects from mapping to be in this last round of research. So we want the ability for people to spontaneously be able to participate or, have research as things pop up. But yeah, the rapid researchers, I'd say it takes about a month all in, and also like 50 to 75% of your time, depending on how much hands-on coaching you're providing. So when I first started, like my first year at Lyft, after I built up the program, it was that same group who were participating time after time. And so it became 25% of my time over a 1-month period towards the end, because my designers, my product managers, my engineers, for the most part, that were running rapid research, like it was old hat to them. They'd done it so many times, they knew what to do. And we were just like, boop, 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 boop. Okay, let's go. And they would show up day of, and that was it. They knew to do a dry run. They, had their hypotheses in advance. There was very little for me to do besides essentially the recruit and the logistics of it on the day.
Okay, great. So Amanda, I have one final question for you, and that is, what are some tips or some advice that you would give to all of us if we wanted to start a program like this? How do we get started?
Yeah. The beginning, and this is the advice I give to researchers that want to get into research as well, is just to begin. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to create 20 templates and a training, and you don't need to buy a gong, though that was the most fun part for me. So buy something fun. But yeah, I would say just like build a small piece forward, whether that's you deciding that you want to train some of your trusted teammates in moderation. Maybe you're building out a training for them. If it's, getting your cross-functional teammates to think through their research requests better in advance. Maybe you're creating an intake form, which is going to help you in the long run. Also, if you're like, okay, I feel like I have, I'm working with cross-functional partners who have been involved in research or have done research themselves, then maybe you are setting up, just a session. Like maybe you have 4 teams and 4 of whoever your customers are, and you just try it out. You lightly coach them, or you give them a discussion guide template and kind of just do it as an experiment between all of you to see how it goes. And it could turn into a program for you all. I think I at least learn immensely on the move, like when I'm in something. And so I think it can be really easy as researchers, and I'm guilty of this as well, to just like, not just want to perfect it, but like really like think through all the kinks first. Like think about all of the things that we need to do as researchers, right? We're like balancing a million things at any given time. And so I'd say, as much as you could inhabit that slide of Elsa letting it go, like just pick that one thing that's going to help you right now, and like move that piece forward and learn from that, and let it kind of snowball.
Yeah, I love that. And I like the way that you mentioned, I didn't even think about this, like it helps them get better at their process of critical thinking and thinking through the ask and what the goals are. Ooh, how many times have some of us had a research request and they have not, we just want them to click around on it and see what they do. And it's like, no, people don't use websites that way.
Yes, totally. And like, I didn't think of this obviously initially, but this has been so helpful for me. Like, and it from a, I don't know, beneficial perspective. Again, I went about this like trying to help teams and scale myself, et cetera, like I told you. Like now I have teams that like have a ton of empathy for me as a moderator, and are like, do you need a break? Are you okay? Whenever I'm moderating, other research, or like are like, know a little bit more about synthesis and are better partners for me if I'm trying to do some co-creation. Or yeah, definitely those requests that come in from people that have gone through rapid research are a lot more fine-tuned. So I kind of trained my team to be the best partners for research outside of this program, which has been a surprise benefit.
Yeah, that is a huge win, I would think, for sure. Like you said, for yourself and for the team. I love that. What a great way to end the talk and the questions. Thank you so much. Everyone give Amanda like a virtual applause or shout out in the chat. Like this was excellent. I'd seen this before, but this was better this time. It was so good. Thank you so much. Before we move, I'm going to share my screen again. I just want to remind everybody we threw something in the chat about the survey. So if you could fill out the survey and let us know what you thought of tonight's event. And again, thank you, Amanda. You can see a picture of Amanda, right? Just making sure. You can see the slides. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. This has been excellent. I learned a ton. You might have sold me a little bit more on democratization. I'm not going to lie. I can see the value a little bit more. I'm kind of digging it. So thank you for that. And we're gonna transition now into the breakout rooms. Again, you're welcome to sign off if you're not feeling it, that's not your thing, but I would really encourage you to stay because this is the fun part where we get to meet all kinds of new people. So let's talk a little bit about, we have a little bit of house rules around our networking, which is pretty simple. Let's be kind to each other. Let's not have any negative or offensive comments, and assume positive intent. So when we go into these breakout rooms and meet new people, let's make sure that we're treating each other with respect. And so for the first prompt, what you could do, we're going to create breakout rooms, randomly assign. You're going to tell your name and you're going to talk about what your specialty is. Are you a designer, a researcher? What do you want to get into? Like, what's your kind of role? And then our first topic, we're going to go in for like 12 to 15 minutes into little rooms. I will bring you back. We will shuffle and enter new rooms and do a second topic. So for the first topic is, what are some tips that you have learned either from tonight or just in general, or from your own experience about moderating research sessions? So let's talk about like, what are some opportunities to make moderating research sessions better? So I am going to stop sharing my screen and get us into some breakout rooms here, if I can find where that is.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'm going to move you. All right, so for those who are maybe or maybe not familiar with what we do now, this is just, we call it happy hour. It's a very casual, ask a question of the group. Anybody from the group could answer. We ask that, answer concisely. Don't hog up the whole stage, but we'd love to hear from anybody here because I think we all have a lot of great perspectives. We ask that you raise your hand and we'll spend a few minutes kind of, if you have a question or a comment or anything you want to share. I don't know what I'm sharing. Am I sharing my screen? Oh, yeah. Just one more reminder to fill out the survey from tonight's event. Provide us feedback. We really appreciate that. But if you have a question that you'd like to propose to the group, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on those who raise their hand. Umang, come off mute. Oh, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Umang. I'm currently an undergraduate student studying UX research and design at the University of Michigan.
Free.
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, you're good.
hear you.
I think it's
You're
Jen who has a problem.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay, cool. At least I'm not going crazy. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm still like an undergrad right now. So I'm trying to find my first full-time kind of like internship in UXR. And as of right now, the only thing I've been really doing is like research positions at like under like professors and stuff, where it's like kind of UX research, but not really. It's more like general stuff. Like, so if anyone here has like gotten more experience in navigating that like first internship or like first job in UX, or like what did you guys do, or what did you guys have like any tips of like what skills you had or like how you presented yourself to get that first one to get the ball rolling?
I will just repeat network, because there's probably 1 in 5 UX researchers. to designers usually out there, and that we're all very helpful, and we'll be more than happy to pass names along, so on and so forth.
And I'd say, just put yourself out there in any career, doesn't matter what it is, going through the interview process, trying to get hired is just demoralizing. I feel like I had actually lost my job. I think that in 2015 realized I was not a finance guy. But just put your application out there, keep applying, because, there's just so many opportunities out there.
I graduated in 2020 from a psych degree, and I applied to over 80 jobs after my undergrad and finally got one interview for an internship with a startup. So just keep applying. It feels very tedious and you start feeling not like you'll get it, but eventually something will come through. So just keep working at it.
Turn it into a game. I made a spreadsheet and I'd check people off, and make it
I
a
did
game.
that too.
Among a lot of university libraries.
I'd also say,
oh, sorry. Okay, I'll finish. A lot of university libraries, including I think the University of Michigan, have like a UX or a design team. So you might see if they have any opportunities to get involved with doing research while you're on campus.
I'd also advocate creating your own case studies as well. I think that's sometimes the best. There's like so many resources and options out there that you can use. I know I've seen a lot in the UX Discord channel that there's people asking for you to take surveys and participate in things and kind of getting those opportunities. I've even seen people who go onto Reddit, and I think there's like one that's can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a way for you to get data. And there's people who have like data pools posted up there that you can take and then kind of use your own, insights to generate kind of your own decks and your own reports from that too.
Yeah, I would agree with Bobby. I would say, hey, Bobby, I would say you just start on a project. They have some sites out there like Fake Clients or briefs.com as well that can kind of generate a design topic. That way you have a project, you can go and ask maybe someone you've met through mentoring, right? Like, how can I make this better? How, what did I do here that I could have done differently? To just continue to learn until you have a portfolio of projects, right, that you can then use and leverage to try and get a job. And again, showcase the skills that you have and how you could help, at their organization as well.
I kind of agree with Christian as well. What's your degree in again? Did you say?
It's in UX design and research. So yeah.
I was thinking it sort of like a backdoor kind of a way, like do what everybody's like recommending, like build case studies and stuff, but maybe get a job as a UX designer. I kind of went in the back door. So I never had an internship. I went as a UX designer and then got really involved in the research side with all the companies I worked with, and then moved in that way. So if you can land a job in UX, and then if there's a company that has like a small research team, then you can put your foot in there and go in the back way.
So I'm curious, going off of that, how competitive UX research is to get into compared to these other roles like design. So I come from a software engineering background. I was trying to get into product management, and I figured product management is closer to software engineering than UX research or other areas that I was considering. But since it's close to so many things, it's really competitive to get into. And I was able to get a UX research contract first. And then that evolved into product management as well. So now I'm not sure which way I want to go career-wise. So I'd be down to explore either more, but I don't know which would be harder to get into. So I just want to learn more about, the ways people have gotten in, people who considered UX research and other things like product management, which was easier to get into. Also, I have a tech background rather than a psychology degree. So, trying to figure out what stage of companies and size. I think I get the sense that startups value that more than the bigger companies, but again, want to vet that by asking around.
I'll take a stab at answering that. So there's at least 5 times as many design jobs as there are UX research roles out there. It's just the nature of UX that design produces a more tangible product for the business than research often does. So in that sense, you're fishing in a bigger pond if you go out for a design position. However, in recent years, it's become much more competitive from an aesthetic basis. So when I started a million years ago, UX design was about, it doesn't matter if it's pretty, it matters if it works and it's usable. And that's almost flipped now. It's almost that the usability of something is assumed, and they want people with very, very highly polished visual skills. So one of my last roles, I was principal product designer, and I got rejected for 20 design positions after doing this for 22 years. So I would say there's more opportunity in the design world, but they're going to have expectations of your aesthetic abilities. And I would agree with what Mike said about starting as a designer, because designers do research too. I mean, let's face it, in a organization that doesn't have dedicated researchers, they're doing all the research along with the product managers. So starting in design is not a bad way. You're going to do research in probably every organization to some degree. You're just not going to be probably doing the type of foundational research that a dedicated researcher would do. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
There was something I thought I would add to that. Don't discount your domain experience. One of the things that I've seen is happen to me, and I've seen it happen to other researchers in our organization, is that developers that come into the role that have experience with the development lifecycle, for example, they can differentiate themselves because they have some experience, and they can bring that experience to the way they conduct research. You still, I mean, it's a suite of skills, but the point I'm trying to make is that don't think that you're starting from scratch. You're not. You come with all of the things that you've been working on developing to date, and so don't discount that domain experience, and maybe even look for opportunities that need researchers in something that you know.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that a lot, because I have been in insurance automation for now over 33 years, but I was a business analyst and a product manager for a really long time, and I got super bored. And I went to HR and said, I need a different job. And they said, well, we're getting bought by this big company who has a UX team, and they need a researcher, and you've got a lot of background in the domain. So would you be interested in that? And that's how I fell into research. Now I'm leading the program for UX research. And we have 2 interns this summer who are generalists. So they do both research and design. And I will tell you, they are amazing at their research skills, but it's also helping them really develop their design skills. And I love this generalist idea, and having we're in the process of budgeting, and I'm hoping that we can bring them on full time as soon as budgets are approved. But I love the fact that they have this whole internship background now with the research, because it's just going to make them amazing designers as we go forward. And from a, finding a job, I mean, I'm looking on LinkedIn right now, not LinkedIn, Indeed.com right now. Put some keywords in your searches, get those notifications of when an internship goes up. Because I'll tell you, the fall is when corporations are looking for their 2023 next summer. Like the fall is when they're looking for their interns next year. So, start searching and applying, like the other said, as much as you possibly can.
I can agree with you, Kayleen, about the generalist, because that's the direction that I went. I think it's and then somebody else mentioned about the idea of stay within your domain, because being a generalist and having those skills of analytic skills as an engineer is a great asset as a researcher. And I mean, I struggled with imposter syndrome for the longest time because I thought, oh, I'm not a researcher because I don't have a degree from Harvard or I don't have a degree from Cornell, and I have a degree from Hard Knocks and through my progression in my career, that's how, but it was that curiosity of wanting to understand the customer, wanting to understand who I'm designing for. I saw myself as a tool, but not as the things that I was designing as my joy, but that what I was designing experiences, but I wanted to understand who I was designing for. So having that thought process analytical, I wouldn't stop, but I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm just agreeing with you that being a generalist is a good idea and going in the back door. So
might I add that all of these soft skills are so important for UX researchers because a majority of the UX evangelism falls on our shoulders. And so I don't have a background in technology at all. I majored in music and studied opera. And one day I was like, I'm going to tech. And so luckily I found my little niche here and I just worked my arse off and networked my butt off. And I'm a fast learner and I happened to get a job. Like I feel like I was lucky to get a job. But yeah, I think those soft skills, knowing how you think and are able to communicate with different minded people, all the computer developers and and that sort of thing, because sometimes they stare at me with like, why are you still talking to me? Like, like they just are like, please go away. But like, no, must hear this. But it's kind of funny. That can be huge, are those soft skills and those transferable skills. So as long as, like Mike said, that you're willing to care enough to understand both sides, because a lot of people aren't and they don't want to. So if you're willing to, you're the person for the job.
Yep.
Hello, may I just quickly share my experience, because it's very funny. So hello everybody, my name is Evelina. It's very late. I'm calling you from Europe, but I was supposed to be investigative journalism, a journalist when I graduated political science. And then I fell in love with my husband and I moved abroad where my work was impossible. So I started to work in a gaming industry, online gaming industry, just completely by accident. And I literally did almost everything what was possible there, from content management to content production. Eventually, I ended up on a product. And for, I would say, like 4 years, I was a product manager and also optimization, like a conversion optimization specialist for ecom. And it was, I really, although I tried so hard, I never actually enjoyed it. But I had no idea how much I've learned until I became a researcher. So I became researcher because as a product owner, I had to, decide all of those things on our platform. And majority of the insights I had was actually quantitative, which never gave me like a full, that comfort that I know enough. So I started to do user research on my own, which was terrible back then. But I never discovered how much I have learned and how much I'm using that knowledge, both from the analytics, understanding the trends, even the basics of technology, because I had to work in Agile, Scrum with developers. Like, Tara, let me just give you an example. I had a project recently where participants were very hard to find because they were on a client, had a customer base that was completely not responsive. And there were already two other researchers with more of a design background. And then I came and I was like, why don't you pull them from the back end? And, I was surprised myself when I was saying it, that I even know what the backend is, and that's where you store that information. So I think that if you have all of these great skills, you will benefit from it. And in a user research world, there is more design skills, but not very much of analytics. So I think you will do perfectly fine. Thank you.
I want to know where you're gaming. Where in Europe are you?
I'm located in Poland right now, but I work for a consulting agency, also software house. But most of our clients are like from the US. Now I have one project with an American client, Germany. It's very different research than probably most of you do, because you get the chance to focus on the one product, and then you like study, build the roadmap, and you check your results. My research is very dynamic. So I have like those 2 or 3 weeks long projects where I'm part of the team. We usually assist in some startups or new ideas of existing companies. So it's very, very different. And I sometimes envy you how much you can really focus on one thing.
But
Cool.
I-
Thanks, Evelina. Evelina, sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions or things they'd like to ask the group? If you do, raise your hand and, don't be shy. As you can see, lots of friendly faces and lots of good perspectives. That's the cool thing. I really like to hear the different perspectives. We all have different journeys, right? Anyone else?
Looks like there's a couple questions in the chat.
Karen, you have your hand. Oh, sorry, Aaron. You're first in my queue. We'll go with you, Aaron, and then we'll go with Karen.
Karen, go first. I'll turn mine over to her.
Okay, Karen, go ahead and unmute.
Oh, thank you. I'm just curious, as I'm like starting the process, how do you approach networking, like mindset, also just like, yeah, the approach to networking.
You're doing it right now, sweetie.
You're here.
Yeah.
First step. Woohoo!
Connect on LinkedIn.
Go on
and-
LinkedIn.
Yeah. And literally you have to go out of your comfort zone, like major comfort. You have, if you see a job that you like, or maybe one day would like, you have to go in there, look up who's on the UX team, find out who are the UX researchers, and message each and every one of them. Hi, my name's Karen. I'm hoping to be a UX researcher one day. Do you have any advice? Or whatever, like ask them questions. Don't just be like, do you have a job? Ask them a question, ask them what books to look at, websites, blah, blah, blah. And then say, hey, can I connect with you too? Boom, connection. So the next time the job opens, you have a connection. Hey, remember I talked to you 2 years ago and you told me to read this book? I know it's like a far reach, but it works. It works.
Yeah, the book is pretty genius. That's good.
And it saves the chat history. I've been saved by that a lot of times. I'm like, someone's birthday shows up and I pull up, I'm like, oh, I messaged them a year ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say, if you reach out to somebody and you ask for time and they can't do it, please don't be offended by that. I mean, I get asked by multiple people a day, hey, I'd love to know how you got into UX research. Can we set up some time? I simply don't have 28 hours in my day. I really wish I did. So, but don't let that, don't be upset if they can't set up individual time with you, but don't let that keep you from reaching out to them and trying to make that connection, because a lot of people can. But I just want you to don't take it personally if someone's like, yeah, I would like to, but I just simply, I can't. So just want to put that out there. It's nothing personal. I would love to talk to everybody under the sun, but sometimes I have to eat and sometimes I have to sleep, and that's just reality. Did that answer your question? Oh, go ahead, Christian.
I was just going to add one more thing to that. like if people do give you some time and give you some advice, some mentorship, another thing is circle back and thank them for that as well, because they are taking time, to kind of help you with some of those things. And, somebody may ask you later for help and you'll maybe want to be thanked for that too.
Well, that was all really helpful. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks. I hope, Karen, you are connecting with people right here. You got the LinkedIn for all the peeps in your group, because yeah, that's why we're here, is to make connections.
Connect with me if you want to.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, people have been putting them into chat as well.
Oh, okay, that's where I'll put it.
Yeah, we had a system, we had a Google Doc, too many people in there, blew it out. So we're still trying to figure out a way that we might be able to have a central location for people to post their LinkedIn. We know it can be very distracting when people post in the chat. Apologies, We doing the best we can. So Aaron, go ahead.
All right, I was just thinking, quick opinion poll. One thing I've noticed is getting to know a lot of you in UX design and me personally. How many of us consider ourselves creative types? I feel like UX is like the great outlet to have this academic research type mind, but also this like creative ways to do it where you're not just focused on studying. Because I know I'm not just, I don't have the aptitude to be like a doctor or a scientist, but I want to use UX research to solve problems. So I'm like interested in that problem until I solve it, and then I want to move on to the next one, right? So how many of us are creatives? Raise a hand. Awesome.
I want to shoot you, Aaron. I want to say, I think we're all creative, like honestly, in different ways. That doesn't mean artistic. Like if you come up with a pretty cool cocktail on your own because you had some funky ingredients, I'm going to like you. I mean, I'm just going to say.
I got my start. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I mean, I got my start, trying to find doctor numbers at a medical record retrieval company where, the last guy before me was just calling numbers and failing. And they're like, hey, how come you're doing them? Well, I'm calling the person next door and seeing if they know that doctor is still there. Just that extra step to kind of say, hey, what's a different way to go about solving this problem?
Yeah, and I think that we do that all the time in our profession. Like, oh, this interview is going off the rails and they're not talking about what we want to talk about. You got to get creative to get them back on the rails, right? So I think we are creative thinkers a lot. It may not just be an artifact that has paint or felt or, something like that. I think probably everyone here has some creative aspects to them. Carrie.
Hi, so I'm a career UX researcher. I actually come from a background in geology. Fun fact, worked as a diamond grader for a year, and then I was a geologist at an oil and gas company when the pandemic hit, and y'all know the rest. But so one of the things that I really find interesting is psychology and like human behavior, but I'm not really sure where to start, like learning. So if you guys had any like good books or online resources, like, where to start, would be really helpful to hear your advice or whatnot.
There's a book, I'll paste it in the chat, 100 things that everybody should know about, or sorry, every designer should know about people. It's a good starting point. I'm not going to.
Oh, I have that one.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It is good, yeah.
No, share it anyways, Jake, because that is a good one. That's the book that is right behind my computer monitor that I was thinking of, by Susan Wenshank.
Yes.
Is that the book? Yeah, that's a great book. But I bet you there's others here that may not be familiar with that. So throw that in the chat. Anybody else? Anybody come from a psychology background? Any recommendations? Oh, sure. The one time there's not somebody from a psychology background here.
I'm not a psychologist, but I enjoyed very much books like Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. At least they have a very good, like they explain the biases and how we perceive things and how far is that from the objective truth. So I would also follow that part. And there are also a lot of like groups on LinkedIn about neuroscientists and behavioral psychology, very interesting. So a lot of good articles there as well are being shared.
Yeah, if anybody has any books or articles, throw them in the chat. That's a great. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a background in psychology, BS in psychology, and I guess probably I don't really have any books besides textbooks, but probably people probably don't want to read those. I guess main topics probably cognitive psychology, I guess behavioral psychology as well, and sensation and perception, especially for being able to know like visual, like what the visual pathways, so that way you can know what is something that's going to catch somebody's eye more likely than something else, or if you have somebody with or like the auditory loop in your brain, if something's jamming that, the person's not going to be able to think clearly to be able to speak or to read anything. So kind of knowing what is the boundaries or what would be causing an issue would probably be very useful for Because yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bobby. I was just going to say also, I'm going to throw the link in the chat for our Slack channel. And this could be a great place to continue the conversation. If you think of a book or you come across a book, there's a channel in there called resources, and we could throw them in there because I too think that would be a great topic to explore a little bit further. They're very, very much goes hand in hand with what we do for a living, right? Anybody else? One more question, maybe? No? Come on, I know you do.
Okay, I've got a question.
See, I knew it. I knew it.
So again, this is again very like beginner UX researcher type of question, but if there was like one thing that you could have maybe done differently when you're starting out your UX research career, whether it's pivoting or going straight into UX or whatever it is, like what would you have done differently or like improved upon now that you've like more experience in the UXR world?
I'll take a stab. And it's going to be what we told you earlier, is to network. I have gotten jobs through my network. I have given jobs through my network, and network with people who have been in the industry a while, and also have peer mentors. I have peer mentors that I talk to that we got into UX research together, and I still call them when I'm like having a crisis. So it doesn't have to be somebody older than you. It doesn't have to be somebody who's been in UX longer than you. Get a network of peers that you can kind of not hit on in like a, I want to take you on a date kind of way, but hit up for information. That's the word. I hit up. Don't hit on them. I didn't say that.
Date
Hey,
us?
it's to go with Andrea and Amanda Gelb's talk, speed dating for.
There you go. Speed dating. Yes. Yes. I love it. That would be my advice. Network it's going to pay off for years and years. So it is tough. I'm pretty extroverted and I still, it takes jumping back into the rope to go and talk to people, it's an effort for all of us, but it really can pay off. Anyone else have any tips? What you'd tell your younger self to get into UXR sooner or faster?
The thing I would say is practice as much as you can. When I say practice, like every conversation is an interview. It doesn't necessarily have, I'm not saying like, hey, tell me more about that with everything you say. But the thing I wish I could have done differently is had more turns a crank at doing research sooner. That's how you learn, getting that feedback. Anything you can do, even if it's informal, getting your family to do a card sort over dinner. It might be a fun game, but that will pay off. It's a slow payoff, but it does pay off.
Yeah, I would also add, learn to become a storyteller.
Yes.
I think one of the key things that I've had success with, and I've learned it, but to learn it earlier, is to become a good storyteller. You need to be able to set the context when you're presenting research findings. You need to be able to set context into the story of the scenario that your participant is going to do when you're doing usability testing. And just learn to be able to put people at ease and tell the story, regardless of what stage of the project you're on, whether it's discovery, whether it's research finding, readouts, whatever. Just become a good storyteller.
And
I would add, I will add something else is like trust yourself, because it's happened to me, and I think it happens to most of us, is that we limit ourselves when we're starting. Like maybe we don't know this, and actually nobody knows. We all always experimenting, trying new things. Even though we say that we know, there are things that we really don't know. And you never know how the user or the client is going to react to what we are trying with. So trust yourself. That's what I will say myself, for my younger self, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bit of an odd answer. I remember when I started getting into user research, somebody suggested this, and I thought it was so brilliant, is become a participant yourself. There is several companies out there that you can use to become a participant for people's user studies. And it's a great option for you to kind of get the experience, the knowledge of how to set your own studies up and your own tests up, and kind of get that perspective that you may not get as a researcher. And you learn a lot about how to conduct it, whether from an unmoderated or a moderated standpoint. It's a great tool to use.
I agree with that. I became a scout for D-Scout, and I'm getting paid at the same time, but I always get looked over because I have too much back knowledge because of as the researcher, but that does help you understand. And the person prior to you is trust yourself. That imposter syndrome does hit everybody. I think it's hit everybody in their career at one point, but trust yourself and trust the knowledge that you know, because you do know a lot more than you think you do. So.
And I was going to add opposite of what everyone said about being a generalist and starting in design. If you're not a designer and you know you're not a designer, don't try to be a designer. Because I did that and I wasted a year of job hunting. And yeah, I'm not a designer. I'm a good wireframer, but yeah. And I think it was my wireframes that got me hired for my current job. But
Is your gong the opera singer? Do you sing?
I'm the opera singer, yeah. And I'm really loud and my company doesn't know what to do with me. Every time I'm on a meeting, they're like, okay, who is this?
I mean,
she wants to turn on the videos. Why is she turning on her video? Everyone, what's happening? So yeah.
I think that's really great advice, Kristen, because I think that there's too much emphasis on trying to do all the things sometimes, even when it's okay that you're not good at it. A lot of certification programs and boot camps are design focused. They're not research focused. And you come out and you're like, shit, I don't want to do this. This is not, I want to be in UX, but I don't want to be a designer. I mean, I was a designer to start with. And I was a graphic designer, art director. Then I went into UX design. I was like, I'm kind of over that. I was over the pixel perfect, all the different states that you had to design for the design system. I wanted to pull my eyes out so I didn't have to do the error states and all the different states. So it's okay to acknowledge and recognize that you don't want to be a designer. You can be a UX pro and not be a good designer or not even want to do it. So I think that's a really fair thing. I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of advice. It's like, just do all the things, get yourself in there and get the job. That too is fair advice, but sometimes that could shoot you in the foot because you're in a position where you're not happy and you're not doing what you want to do. So kind of weighing that.
True.
Speaking of boot camps being design focused rather than research focused, do you have any recommendations for UXR boot camps?
NNG.
NNG.
Nielsen Norman Group.
Yeah. Super
right.
intense.
They have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
They're not cheap though.
No, but there's another one. Information Design Foundation is another one.
Interaction Design Foundation.
Thank you.
I've been taking some of their classes, but the jury's still out on that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about them myself.
I'm just not sure because I've been in the field a long time. And so I know a lot of the stuff. So it's not new to me. If it was new to me, it might be a different experience, but I don't disagree with what they're teaching. So that's a big plus. It's not like, oh, this is wrong. It's good and it's cheaper. They do have a UX research boot camp that's pretty new-ish and launched. And it's a little cheaper than Nielsen Norman stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to do oh, are you talking about the General Assembly? Oh, the interaction design. Yeah, I saw someone.
General Assembly has research stuff. I've never taken it, so I don't know how good it is.
Yeah, I told them about
they
that.
have a research. I had no idea they had a research one now.
Yeah,
it looks like they do.
Who does?
General Assembly. They used to only have UX design.
So I called them about the research boot camp, and my friend told me that was the highest regarded one in the Bay Area. I emailed them, sorry, I didn't call. And they said that they don't know when they'll be having more sessions, which to me says they don't know if they'll be having more sessions. And they were trying to sell me on the design one.
Yeah, they might just be waiting for a full class or to find a teacher. But they're expensive. That's who I went through. They're very expensive. and pandemic hit right when I graduated. And
Sometimes
so-
Stanford gives out courses. I'm not sure if Stanford's still doing it, but they also give courses in research and design. So
MIT has one too.
Yep.
Yeah, Bentley does as well. But obviously that's not cheap.
Does IDEO have anything? IDEO
design, I think
is it just design?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought of them too, but I think they're just design.
Okay, you guys,
Forrester
we need
has
to
one.
make one. UXRS bootcamp.
That'd be cool.
So I don't know if I haven't heard anything about it, but Memorizely, I know they have like little mini, like kind of 5-week boot camps. I've heard good things about their UI. They do have a research one. I have no idea how it is, but it's another option. Also, O'Reilly, I think, and even Rosenfeld, they have a lot of
Rosenfeld's good.
courses and actually very good books too. There's a UX research Team of One, I think, is one of their books. That's
Leah Bewley's book. That's an excellent book.
And Rosenfeld has another book on storytelling too. So
I know LinkedIn Learning has
I was just gonna say that.
UXR like pathway learning thing as well. So I don't know how good it is, but I do have LinkedIn Learning, so I probably should check it out at some point for sure.
Yeah, we've been using LinkedIn Learning a lot.
Would you recommend that the UXR stuff that they have on there?
I don't know if I would recommend it over some others because I haven't taken all the others, but my company has like a free subscription to LinkedIn Learning for all employees. So that's where I've, a lot of the interns, I'll put them into some of those programs and they seem to like them.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I would say it's a little lackluster in my opinion for LinkedIn. But if you have it for free and available through like whether a school or even through your corporation, then definitely take advantage of that for sure.
That's good to know.
Is there anything specifically that you're looking to learn, Tara, like for UXR?
I'm just trying to like, again, like just being a newcomer, like just kind of like brush up on, general research methodologies, like whether it's like, surveys or usability testings or just trying to like wrap my head around, like, I know the NN is a really good resource, but like, it's one thing to like read about stuff, but another thing to like put into practice. So I'm just trying to, again, do the readings, but then also like make sure that I can do it in real life.
Yeah, among all, I'm going to do a little shameless plug here for the UX Research Strat Group. We do have a lot of recordings. We have a recording on what methods to use when, concept testing, lots of different recordings. We've had a lot of different speakers about methodologies. So if you go to the YouTube channel and scroll through some of that, the heuristic evaluation, jobs to be done, all kinds of different things. So that might be, an alternative resource for you to check out as well. Afraid I'm going to wrap us up for the night, if that is okay with you all. Thanks for coming. Hopefully we can see you all on Saturday. I believe it was September 17th for Debbie's event. We'll have networking there as well. And she is a great person to ask questions. So some of these burning questions that you've had here tonight, bring them again. And ask Debbie, because she'll have a different perspective than everyone here. That's what I love about these kind of happy hour group sessions is multiple perspectives being brought in, and they're not all the same. And that's cool because that's okay. It's a big industry. Everybody comes in different ways. There's no silver bullet on how to get in. If there was, I wouldn't be here. I would have already cashed in on that silver bullet and living in I don't know, paradise, wherever that would be. But anyway, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you in September. Have a good evening, morning.
Bye.
Your
Have a
time
great
zone.
night. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been great.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.